Babylon is a relatively new film that was released near the tail end of 2022 and was directed by Damien Chazelle. It stars Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, and Diego Calva, and is described as a tale of outsized ambition and outrageous excess that traces the rise and fall of multiple characters during an era of unbridled decadence and depravity in early Hollywood. I've been so interested in this movie ever since it was announced, but got cold feet when it came to actually seeing it when it was originally in theaters, due in part to the film's middling critical reception. It seems like a film that was right up my alley, though. A star-studded cast, a look into the early days of Hollywood, told on an epic and grand scale. It just seemed like the film was made specifically for my taste, and so when I finally saw the 4K for this movie out at my local Best Buy, I took the plunge and finally decided to give this film a shot, and I'm so glad I did, because I loved this film. It was everything I could have hoped for and more, and I almost was about to put this up there as one of my all-time favorite movies, alongside my favorite Damien Chazelle movie, Whiplash. But sadly, the film has one fatal flaw in that it just doesn't stick the landing in its final moments. But we'll get into that scene once we start the review. Now, I'll add a disclaimer here. This film can be a lot. There is a lot of excess. There's scenes of orgies, violence, depravity, and that is definitely not going to be for everyone. And perhaps Chazelle went a bit too far in this direction, and it will ultimately turn off some. But for me, he presents this film as a dark comedy, and there is something truly dark and twisted about this film that I actually admire, and it made it funny, even in the grossest of scenes, which we'll get into later. But what it has to say overall, I think, is very important. So, with that said, let's do what we always do here and go behind the scenes to see just how this film was made. After the release of Damien Chazelle's previous film, First Man, he announced his next project would be a period drama set in the golden age of Hollywood. Lionsgate was originally the frontrunner to acquire the project after distributing La La Land back in 2016, with Emma Stone and Brad Pitt possibly to star. In November, Paramount Pictures acquired the worldwide rights. It was around this time, though, the film was described as being set during the transition from silent films to talkies. By December of 2020, Margot Robbie was in early negotiations to replace Emma Stone, who had exited the film due to scheduling conflicts. Filming, though, originally was set to take place in California in mid-2020, but was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Filming would finally begin on July 1st of 2021 and wrapped on October 21st of the same year. Shays Castle was used for the exterior shots of the mansion in the opening party scene, and interior shots were filmed inside the Ace Hotel, Los Angeles. The movie ranch, Blue Sky Ranch, was used for the Kinescope Studios set in the film. Justin Hurwitz, who has collaborated on many of Chazelle's other films, composed the score for the film. The film was screened for critics on November 14th of 2022 and at the Samuel Goldwyn Theater in Los Angeles and in New York City the following day, and was finally released on December 23rd of 2022. Babylon would go on to gross $63.4 million at the worldwide box office on a budget of $80 million, making it a financial failure. The audiences polled by CinemaScore awarded the film a C+, and many critics were left mixed on the whole thing. Many praised the cast, score, cinematography, costume, and production design, but criticism was pointed towards the screenplay and direction. The main cast was also praised, particularly the main three, Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, and Diego Calva. Other non-critics such as Stephen King would also praise the film, and the movie was nominated at several award ceremonies and was nominated at the Academy Awards for Best Costume Design, Original Score, and Production Design. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's go into my thoughts on the film. Babylon, as I said before, is everything I could have ever wanted in a movie. It's big, bold, it's epic, it has a huge cast of big-name actors, it's 3 hours long, it's literally the kind of movie I would love to make if I had the chance, and every moment of the 3-hour runtime had me glued to the screen. I barely looked down to look at my phone. It was that engaging for me, and is definitely a film that I think will stick with me for a very long time. However, it has one small, tiny flaw for me in its final moments that for me is a prime example of how a film's ending can practically ruin a film for you. It's because of this one tiny, solitary moment that I can't say the film was perfect in my eyes. And that's a shame because this one's really special and was worthwhile to see. But before we get into my one and only negative, let's talk about the positives, which is pretty much the rest of the movie. Babylon is like a combination of several different movies that I love. One of the big ones is, of course, The Wolf of Wall Street, which many people compared this movie to when it came out. And you mix that with a little bit of Singing in the Rain, a dash of A Star is Born, and the filmmaking style of the new Hollywood era, and you have what this film ends up being. And I'm here for it. And the film wastes no time showing you exactly what it's about in an opening scene that so perfectly and disgustingly shows you both the absurdness and exaggerative nature of the story, while also showing you this is not the classic Hollywood story you thought you were going to get. And that happens by having an elephant defecating on a man in the opening minutes of the film. It's gross, yes, but it's blunt and to the point. It's moments like these, though, that will turn off some audiences that aren't prepared for a film going in this direction. But for me, it works. I also just love how this film's opening act works. We get introduced to all the important players and quickly figure out who they are throughout this whole big party scene that includes women pissing on men for sexual pleasure, massive orgies, and a lot of cocaine. It depicts the pure excess of Hollywood, but in these moments, you get characters with real wants and dreams, such as Manuel, who wants to get into the movie business and be a part of something bigger, or Nellie Leroy, who wants to be a star, or Jack Conrad, who is an aging movie star at his absolute prime. This first act delivers on everything. One of my favorite parts of the film is early on after the party, where we see all our leads at the Kinescope filming location and we see them all taking part in the movie business. Nellie showcases her sexuality and how she has what it takes to be a star. Manuel tries to get in the good graces of Jack Conway and work for the movie business, which gets him in trouble with several extras wanting to riot, and then a hilarious scene of him racing to get a camera before they lose the light for the scene they're shooting that day. It showcases the pure chaotic nature of filmmaking, but also shows how rewarding the experience can be when the footage they shoot is more than perfect. But the film also does a very exaggerated and unglamorous take on the breakthrough of sound and shows how hectic that transition really is. There's this great scene where Nellie is filming a single scene in a studio. There's no air conditioning because that might be picked up in the sound booth. The cameraman is put in a hot box so the camera won't make sound, and Nellie has to say her lines loud enough, but not too loud, so the mics can pick it up and not be distorted, and everyone has to be absolutely silent on set. Everything just goes wrong in this scene, and they can't get anything right. And it just goes on and on and on until the take is perfect. But at what cost? Because it's soon revealed the film's cinematographer has died of heat exhaustion from the poor working conditions. I like how distinct the film's first half is from its second half as well. The first half is about making your dreams come true and the magic of Hollywood and the movies, and the second half breaks that down We see how Jack Conway is no longer the big name he used to be. Nellie is seen more for scandals than her actual career, and the promising Manuel has rebranded himself as Manny and has completely stripped away his Hispanic roots for fame and fortune. It reminds me a lot of the themes presented in Chazelle's early film Whiplash, where that main character changes from a promising prodigy and lover of music, and it consumes him to the point of, is it even about the music anymore? I also have to bring up one of the most tense scenes in the entire film for me that might honestly be my favorite. It follows a character I haven't mentioned until this point, and that is Sidney Palmer, a musician who makes it big playing in the movies. And in this instance, the movie he's filming is at risk of not being shown in the South because Palmer's black skin tone is lighter than all the other black players. So he is forced to wear blackface to shoot the scene so they don't run the risk of it looking like a mixed race band on film. It's truly heartbreaking to watch. The acting is also just great in this film, especially from the main three, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, and Diego Calva, and each one has their own standout moment. But for me, Diego Calva shines the most and is by far the most relatable character in the film. Everyone is just a joy to see, especially Tobey Maguire, who shows up near the end of the film as a mob boss that Nellie owes money. So Manny has to try to pay off her debts, and we get these insane scenes of Tobey Maguire just hamming it up and being really threatening as he shows Manny his den of debauchery with a freak show buried somewhere under LA with a man that literally makes money eating rats. It's honestly a portion of the movie that felt like the only part I might actually cut, but it makes for one extremely entertaining scene that I really loved. The music by Justin Hurwitz is also fantastic. It's memorable and grand and just full of so much energy, especially in the early scenes. Music is just so powerful in Chazelle's movies, and he understands it more than many directors, and it's just great. Then you have the cinematography, which is beautiful and really shows the sweaty, grimy, and dirty side of Hollywood. This is not a glamorous looking movie, despite the sets and costumes trying to tell you it is. And it just works so well, in my opinion. It just perfectly encapsulates the sleaziness of Hollywood in a way that no other film has really been able to do, and I admire it for that. Now, there is so much of this movie I love, and to be honest, I was watching this movie the whole time thinking about how this is going to be up there with some of my favorite movies of all time. I was mesmerized by the acting, directing, screenplay, characters, story, cinematography, music. All of it was, for me at least, without flaw. And the 3 hours just flew by, and all the movie needed to do after all of that was bring it all home and stick the landing. And sadly, I have to say they blundered the movie's ending in the final minutes. Now, I will say, I love what the ending of this movie represents. We follow Manny, who returns to LA many years later with his family to show them where he used to work. And it's filled with so much meaning for him. This is where he was living his dream, and that alone is powerful. Then we follow that up with him going to the theater to see a showing of Singin' in the Rain, the film that inspired this movie, and is clearly a film near and dear to Damien Chazelle's heart, and we see in this instance Manny break down into tears as he's witnessing a movie that is literally about his own experiences of working on film and dealing with the introduction of sound. We even get glimpses of scenes from Singin' in the Rain that are mirrored in Babylon, and that is all great and really powerful. And then Chazelle drops the ball with a huge montage clip show of the history of cinema from the silent age to the sound and into the modern era. We've seen movies like Passion of Joan of Arc and Wizard of Oz, which I'm fine with, But then it keeps going, and we see scenes from Raiders of the Lost Ark and finally Avatar, and all I could do is groan. It felt so out of place and inauthentic to the film. Sadly, I think this ending does a lot of harm for the movie, and it sucks because it's my only flaw, and it seems so small, but it has huge ramifications because of how it makes me feel about the ending overall. In the end, though, Babylon was worthwhile. It's a huge love letter for a filmmaker that has a lot of respect for Hollywood's golden age and is made by someone that wants to do whatever he wants. And that's what I admire about Babylon. It goes big and is deeply rewarding. It's funny and poignant and is everything I could have wanted in a film. I love a big bombastic epic with big stars and huge sets and epic runtimes, and this is the kind of film I would love to make. I just wish the film had stuck the landing at the end because it was going so well before then. Maybe in the future I'll grow a bit softer on the ending and not be as harsh because I do love this movie and think it's one of the best films of 2022. But with one flaw I just can't get behind right now. I can't say it's perfect, but it will be one I will be looking forward to revisiting, and maybe even I can give it a higher score because I really want to. But as for now, with all that said, I'm going to give Babylon an extremely high and well-deserved 8 out of 10. Well, guys, I want to thank you for watching this review. This was a film I was nervously excited for, and it ended up being something I really loved. I just wish I could have loved every part of the ending. But maybe someday, or maybe I'll even change my mind after this review. Who knows? I would take this time to recommend the film to everyone, but I know it's not going to be one for everyone. If what I said doesn't interest you in the slightest, I'd say just skip it. But if you are interested, give it a shot, and maybe the ending will work for you where it didn't work for me. But as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and stay positive.